because like in India, in Armenia, it goes back thousands of years.
What kind of reaction, the first reaction you're getting in India?
First reaction is that they relate to it.
Any plan to make movie on this story?
It has all the ingredients to make a classic movie.
Welcome back. We are in talks with Dr. John D. Ballan. Dr. Ballan, your name of your book is really very interesting. Grey wolves and white doves. What do you mean by this name?
There are some scenes in the book that have wolves in there and some very traumatic scene with doves. But just as the name may indicate, there is the word gray in there, that things aren't black and white, and it's difficult to tell what's true, what's not.
Right.
So that there is that component. Also, the prey and the predator and the pack of wolves attacking the innocent.
Right.
But ultimately, there are two more reasons that are not very apparent.
Right.
One is a very critical character in the book, whose name is Soluk Kurt. He's a colonel of the Secret Service.
Okay.
The translation of that is Grey Wolves.
Okay.
And one more thing is, over 100 years, there has been a very clandestine, secretive organization that's very nationalistic and behind many of the atrocities that befell the Armenian people during the Armenian Genocide.
Okay.
They are called the Grey Wolves.
Okay. I'll ask something about the Gajapati. In the Gajapati disturbance there, I mean, in your time when you were a child, problem is still there.
Yeah.
The India would like to know, we would like to know, that what exactly is the problem? Why this problem is there from last 30, 40 years? Yeah,
well, in fact, this problem is there for almost 1,000 years.
Right.
But it's been most, I guess, prominent or it really escalated right before and during World War I.
Right.
When Turkey decided to annex Armenia and in that process annihilate the Armenian population.
Right.
Which was the first genocide of the 20th century.
True.
And the remnants of that population, there are very few left, sprinkled in these villages, as an example, my family, who had to live in fear and constant trauma, basically, not of only the past, but knowledge that if they are uncovered, that there will be consequences because of their religion and nationality and Armenian identity.
Right.
So all that, although again, this is a story in the 60s and 70s, 50 years after the genocide, but you cannot but fuse that victim mentality in some people,
right.
The criminal mentality in others of having perpetrated something 50, 60 years earlier, and still feeling that they can perpetrate further crimes without any retribution.
True.
So all that comes into play, while also it's the story of any child that could be anywhere growing up and facing adversity.
Right.
So the main thread is the child growing up, but then these historical, national, cultural elements get fused in, in just enough where people get educated about it, but they don't feel that they've been preached to or that it's overbearing.
Right. It seems that in your opinion, in these kind of turmoil situation, culture and heritage, they play pretty major role, particularly
Yes.
on child psychology and all. And I'll give you one example. You know, in India also we are also facing lots of problems.
Yes.
One problem is there in Kashmir. But if you see the terrorist over here, a terrorist in Pakistan or terrorist in Afghanistan or terrorist in India, you'll find that they are in the age group of teens.
Yes.
So this is somewhere where I see that upbringing, the role of parent, role of education, culture, heritage. And I see in your book, your driving force is this. Please talk
Yes.
about something more about your book.
Yeah, I think you really hit it because in particular the Indian readers truly identify with this. They relate to the story, to the events, and also to the experiences, because they see some of the most precious experiences, whether tragic or happy in their lives, they see in the story and they relate to it. Culturally, similarities are there, and also obviously the historical aspects, the ones you mentioned, whether it's in Kashmir and other places of people seeking, whether it's independence or retribution or no matter what we call it, it's ultimately comes to education, right?
True.
Do people actually do cling to the culture and heritage? Because like in India, in Armenia, it goes back thousands of years.
True.
A very rich heritage, very rich culture.
True.
As Indians know, because Armenians were in India for hundreds of years, contributing to the culture here as well.
True.
But when you have that kind of a heritage and lineage of rich literature and art and music and heroes and ballads about the heroes, etc., to then have that wiped out overnight and all your lands taken from you is not something people can forget very easily. Or forgive until the point where the perpetrator comes and says, I accept, I apologize, can we find a way forward?
Yeah.
I think people can forgive at that point. They should never forget.
Okay.
These things should not be forgotten.
True.
Because as the famous author said, you know, if you forget history, it will repeat itself.
Tell me something about climax of your story, climax of your book.
It's a very action-packed thriller, in fact. I mean, it's difficult to imagine that it's, although the 10 years of a boy's life from 6 to 16,
Right.
that in that period you can have so much action-packed, and it's a thriller. So there are quite a few periods of climax in this book, and then also there are the periods of comic relief and some very beautiful imagery and vivid scenes. But, you know, there is one very early on, well, the prologue itself is very climactic, right? Because of the airport scene you mentioned earlier, and the potential of doing so much harm to so many people.
Right, true.
Then, as you get into the first few chapters, there is a climactic period of a very, very tragic event that befalls the child that maybe I shouldn't mention, not to get your readers, you know, give them the information ahead of time. But it is something that is incredibly moving and emotional. And then there are some other periods in the book, including all the way to the end. The finale is also very climactic, but very inspirational and uplifting.
Great. And what kind of reaction, the first reaction you're getting in India?
Again, I think the first reaction is that they relate to it. They feel that it speaks to them and to their heart and to their most precious experiences. The other thing that the reaction is, they talk about the writing, of how vivid it is, that they feel they are in the action and that they are going through that journey with the little boy. And then I've had people comparing it to Charles Dickens' and to John Grisham and Dan Brown. So the best of both worlds, right? The literary classics and the modern suspense thrillers.
Right.
So it's been very, very gratifying to see that reaction.
From your childhood, you wanted to write this story.
Yes.
You wanted to write this book.
Yeah.
Why so late? Why after 30 years or 20 years you started writing this and then this book?
Yeah, I think it's the trauma and the shame and the fear that I had carried with me for all those decades.
Okay.
I even didn't speak to my family members about these experiences, and to my wife. I've been married 20 years.
Okay.
She found out about these when she read the book.
Wow, very interesting.
Yeah, it was not an easy thing for me to talk about these things, and yet when I sat down to write it, it just came, it flowed, and it was incredibly liberating.
Any plan to make movie on this story?
I would love to. It's first of all, this is a great gift already that it's been published and launched in India with such a wonderful reception.
Right.
But my hope is next to turn this into a feature film, because it has all the ingredients to make a classic movie.
My best wishes. It was really nice talking to you, Dr. Ballan. In our next episode, we'll again come back with a special person. Keep watching Lok Sabha television.